So I've put the steering box in the vise, and I don't know if you can see, just let me see if we can get it. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. I've put my little 2.5 inch wheel on the end of here. I have actually, since I did that, I took the seal out the front, out of the end here, just to give me a better reading, because that seal was just a bit too tight and it was putting off the readings a bit. So what it says when we reassemble these, let's go by the book, it says we have to tighten them up to 4 to 5 pounds to settle the bearings, and then back off to 2 to 3 pounds. So that's kind of easy, and we're going to use our new tool, and we're just going to simply ratchet that in, and we're going to just keep turning that wheel just a little bit. Now we're going to just give it a quick squirt with some oil in those bearings, make sure that they're well lubed up. Okay, so we're getting a bit tight now. It's not much you need, you know. So let's see. That's about 1 pound. That's about 5 pounds. That's about 5 pounds. So we're going to back that off until it comes down to 2. A bit more. There we go. So that's on 2 pounds. So now what we can do, we can take the lock nut, take the lock nut and a punch, put this on somehow. Let's try that bit. Yeah. Hammer, 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 hammer. Hammer's here, and we'll just lock that up. Make sure it's still on 2 pounds, which it is. So that's good. We're happy with that. So we've got the preload on there. So now we've got the valve gear and or the worm installed. We're going to now install it into the steering box. So we're going to take the selector and we're going to put some tape around the thread to protect it, and we're also going to take it just a little way up here and protect the spline, so the spline doesn't catch the seal. Now there are 1 or 2 things you've got to be careful of. I've inserted the piston. In fact, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the camera off the stand and we're going to look at it like from a different angle. One of the things that they don't tell you in the book about this installation is everything has to be set up correctly. If you do it wrong, you'll make a mess of it. You can get out of mesh very easily. If you look down there, you can see the pinion, the gear on the rack down there, and on this worm, we can see here that the diameter there is smaller than the diameter here. This will hinder you putting the box in, so turn it just so that that's at the smallest diameter, because there's the notch where this wheel has to pass, and it won't go in any other way. Also, I've pushed the piston right to the very end because there is some confusion as to say where it should go. In one set of books it says 3 inches, and another manual it says 2.5. I think when it says 2.5 it means from this lip here, just where that where it's machined square, not the taper. but I've pushed it right the way to the very end. I haven't put the screw in yet. I've just taken it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop it in, and we're going to have to tap it in because the seal is in the bottom. We make sure everything's nicely lubed up and there's no debris in there, bits of tape where you've been playing around with it before, and we're going to tap that in and we're going to set it up. You cannot get this stage, what did we say? You can't do this stage out of sequence. You have to do it like this. So we're going to lube everything up well, make sure everything's nice and oily, and then we're going to line everything up. So we've got to line up this shaft, this gear, and this all at the same time. It's tricky, but it's not impossible. See, I can feel that's gone in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a nut on the top, and I'm going to tap it down, and I'm going to make sure under the vise that the shaft's got enough room for it to go through at the bottom. It's not going to hit the bottom of the vise because that could be embarrassing. So with a mallet, a rubber hammer, I'm going to just line that up and I'm going to tap it down. There. See how easy it is? It doesn't need much, but it's got to go through that. It's got to go through that oil seal. So that was easy. The next thing I've got to do is somehow, I'll turn my flashlight on, is line up those gears. And how I do that is I'm looking down inside here to see the gears. And when I did the first box, I did it on the bench and I was all over the place. But this is a lot better method. So because we put some tape on the shaft, we can turn the shaft a little bit. And what we're finding out now is we've got a problem with engagement. See, we've got to get that down and engage. Where's my? Ah, there's my wheel. I've got to put this wheel on and turn this shaft a little bit so it engages. There we go. So we've got some wiggle room now. And now I think that's going to tap all the way down into the bottom. And I'm wrong. Oh, that's right. Again, you've got to move these things around. Now, so we're engaged in the gear, we're engaged in the worm, and I'm going to show you what it looks like now. I hope you can see down there where the teeth are engaged and the worm is engaged here. I've got a bit of dust on there. I'll have to take it out and clean it again. But anyway, that's where it should be. Now, what you have to do is set this into the middle. And there's another thing they don't tell you. So I'm going to turn the wheel while we can see it. And we're going to turn that into the middle. That was easy enough. The next thing, we've got some grease on this slipper to hold it in. I've changed the seal. And I'm going to just insert this till it touches the rack. Tighten that up and then back it off one full turn. The reason will become clear. It's to stop the rack banging up and down, if you see what I mean. The next thing we've got to do is put the end cap on. Why do we put the end cap on here and put that on straight away? Well, we're going to set the what do you call it, the backlash. But sometimes when you're playing around and turning this gear, the piston at the end can knock. If you don't have the cap in, this is what I'm trying to say. If you don't have the cap in, the piston can come too far. This goes out of mesh, and you can't get it back in again. So you've got to strip it all down. So set it in the middle, put the cap on, and you will find out it's going to be all right. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift this out the vise so you can see what I'm rabbiting on about. Because I've got to take it out to put the cap in. If you look inside there, the piston's raised a little bit. And that hits against the end of the cap here. You can see where it's been touching. and that's like it stops. So it stops this way, and it's to stop this way. And if you turn the input shaft too far, this will come out too far, go out of mesh. As I said, you've got to start all over again, which is a pain. So I'm going to just show you how to put the snap ring back in. Now I've just put a little bit of grease on the seal. Again, I've made sure the piston's down at the bottom, like midway. Whilst I'm here, I might as well describe how this steering box sort of works. When I keep saying about the valve or the worm, depending on where the gearbox is, or where the steering is, it allows pressure to go either side of the piston to assist the turning of the shaft, the selector shaft. And this is what this pipe's for. It's to allow pressure to come from the front valve block and press on here. So that's why it's called power assisted steering. It's just like just a bit of an assistance hydraulically to turn the wheels. If the power steering fails, if you lose all your oil, or your level's too low, or your pump blows up, your steering still will work. That's a good thing about this. So now I'm going to put the cap in. I'm going to put it in as square as possible, and I'm going to tap it down with a hammer. There, you can hear it's come against its shoulder. Next, we're going to put the snap ring back in. Now, this can be quite daunting to people because it looks a nasty piece of springy stuff, but it isn't too bad actually, because what you need is a big pair of vice grips. So what you do is that there's the alignment hole, and you put this 1/2 inch past, and you grip it with your vice grips like this. Wait a minute, get hold of it. There we go. Everything's all slippy with oil. You have to get used to that. And you pull it into the hole at the bottom. There, it's a bit tricky to do because, there we go, that's what we want. And clamp it up nice and tight. There, you see, it almost falls in on its own. And then if you get the hammer, snap. That's why we call them snap rings, because they snap into place. That is now done, all right? That's good. We're happy with that. So the next thing we're going to do is fit the cover. All right, but before we fit the cover, we're going to put the steering box into its midway position, because we need to do that to get the backlash. So I'm going to just turn this around a little bit and show you how we do that. So we need to set this steering box in its midway position, like halfway. And you can count it and go like this, but there's an easier way to do it. If you've ever wondered what this little slot is here and what this hole is here for, well, you simply put a bolt in the slot like that, and then you know that that is exactly halfway. We can take our little tool here and turn it, and you can see I haven't got the cap on at the moment, so this is loose. This is just temporarily nipped on. But what we do is we turn it until that is in its comfortable, handy place, like that. And now we know that that is in its straight ahead position. This is another good way to use this. Just tap it out. It's M8 by 125, that thread. It's usually all dirty. This is a good way if you want to put the spline back onto the shaft down here to get your steering wheel central. Just do it like this. It's so easy, you'll get it all back together again. There's always an easy way to do things, isn't there? So now I've got that on. I'm going to take this out the vise, spin it upside down and put the cap on. So I've set the box up in the vise. I've had to take the drop arm off because I couldn't get it in properly. This isn't, I haven't got enough room. But you probably noticed what I've done is I've tapped the shaft up a little bit to raise this bearing thing here. There is a reason for that too. We're going to put this end cap on. We're going to make sure it's all nicely lubed up, and we've got to make sure that that seal's been changed and there's no nicks or tears in it when you've been putting it on. Alright, we'll just give it a quick inspection. Plenty of oil. You don't need sealer or anything on these boxes. The seals usually do the job themselves. I just need to find a piece of paper. This gets awfully oily. It's terrible. So what we're going to do, we're going to screw that shaft down, that cap, because we're getting to the near to the end stages now, which is kind of exciting, I suppose. There we go. And we're just going to make sure that that bushing is in place. Now it is a bit wibbly wobbly. That's because there's no, there's nothing to support it. This bearing does the supporting at the top. The bearings aren't worn out. It's just where the tolerances are. So now we're lining up into the cap. And what we can do now is put the bolts in and progressively tighten that down. Now this is important bit. You don't want to go down with an air gun or anything like that and start hammering away and tipping the cap and breaking it. It's only aluminium, can break quite easy. So let's get these sort of started, and then once we're happy there, we'll just start doing a little bit opposite. You can see how easy it is to go down. Just when you're doing this, when you're squirting oil about, like I say, I use a little squirty bottle to put my oil in. Try not to get any oil inside the tapped holes. These are blind tapped holes. That means it doesn't go out to the bottom. So if you get oil into the holes, it can hydraulic the threads and crack the casting. Believe me, oil's got an awful lot of power hydraulically, so that's one thing we don't want to do. I looked at that before I put this in the vise. And again, you can see how easy it goes down. Now, what I do now, before it's tightened up, I just wiggle this shaft around just to make sure we're still happy. We aren't binding. Because when it binds, that's not to bind. But we don't want it to jam up anywhere. Again, nice and even. Now you can start to see the oil squidging out of the cap, which is good. And again, you see how much backlash we've got on there. This is the next stage. So I'm going to just snip these down a bit more. There. I'm going to torque these down properly. I don't know what the setting is at the moment, so I'm just going to nip them down for demonstration purposes. So we've got this backlash. This shaft isn't turning. I can see that because it's at the bottom, it's not turning the shaft. So to eliminate the backlash, first of all, we put the new nut on. This is 19mm. A bit stiff. I'm going to just pause this because it's a bit boring. So with the nut sort of halfway down, now we're going to eliminate that backlash, and by screwing this bolt down. That's why I didn't put the nut all the way down to the bottom. And what that's doing is it's bringing the shaft, the selector shaft, down to be in perfect line. Well, should I say, it's getting the maximum contact. It's like a wedge almost, that wheel that was on the selector. It's riding too high at the moment, so there's backlash between the wheel and between the worm and the wheel. So we've got to bring that down a little bit so it's it's nicely synchronized. All the time, just turn your shaft, and you watch this bit at the same time as I'm turning. You can see it's getting less and less and less. What what you want to do is just, it's better if you have the arm on the bottom, because then you can see the arm moving. That's perfect. So I'm going to lock that nut up. So that's done. There we go. That feels really nice now. And the next thing we're going to do is test the poundage, the resistance, and by tightening this nut up here, we'll use the string and the balance to set the tension of this stopper onto this rack, because you want the steering to fly back, you know, you want it to self-center, and this can be, if this is too stiff, you'll just turn it one way and it won't turn back. All right, so that's very important. So I'm just going to reset the steering box and we'll get back. So we need to set this at around about £5, so there's £5 of resistance, and we just a little bit at a time. It's about 4. Ooh. See, we didn't move it that much. That's about 5. I'm going to just double check that. A little bit more. See, it isn't much. A little bit more. About 6, 7. That's a bit too much, you see. Look at that. We're just going to back this off a bit. See how it moved? I think that's its happy space. I think that's it. So I'm not going to do any more than that. So now I'm going to take this out of the vise and put the grub screw in. These are a very strange steering box regarding thread size. This is a 7/8 UNF. This is inch. The cap bolts are metric. It's a mix of all sorts of stuff. I really can't work it out. So we're going to nip this grub screw down till it's nice and snug, which is there, and then we're going to put the seal back in, because I haven't forgotten about that. So the last thing to do before pressure testing is to put the seal in and just set it down nice and snug, don't go too wild, and then we can put the snap ring in. So I've changed this design. I'm not going to put the seal in with a steel washer. This is thick enough, so by putting this snap ring just behind it, that seal, it's going to provide a nice fit. And again, we'll get the tube, we'll push that ring in, and it just snapped into place. So that's good. So the next thing is testing.